Hello and welcome to Legislative Report with your state representative, Tom Murt, who represents the 152nd District, the folks who live in Montgomery County and in Philadelphia County. And as always, I'm here with Representative Murt. Welcome.
It's great to be here, Herb.
We want to talk about a number of really important issues, but it's been a busy fall, and you've been quite involved in things that are going on here at the Capitol. But I'm going to start with an issue that really has been very important to you, really close to your heart since you've been at the state, and that is human service type issues. And we're talking about mental health now. There have been a number of things, or some things in the works on mental health and mental health access. You want to talk about those and your involvement in them?
Specifically, right now we have two pieces of legislation under consideration. One is actually going to be voted on by the House of Representatives very soon, and the other will soon be kicked out of the Insurance Committee. And in the United States, we have a federal law that's called the Mental Health and Addictions Parity Law. And essentially, this federal law says that insurance carriers that provide mental health coverage have to treat mental illness, mental health, and addictions in the same magnitude as they would cover a broken leg or any kind of physical ailment. The enforcement of this law is the responsibility of each state's Department of Insurance, and in Pennsylvania we have a very robust Department of Insurance that is very active in enforcing this federal law. It's very difficult because the way that they enforce it, they react to complaints that people file if they don't believe they're getting good coverage for addictions or mental illness, depression, bipolar, post-traumatic stress, and so forth. They'll file a complaint, and the complaint is quickly looked into. The other way they do this is through what's called market conduct audits. These audits are very difficult. They're very cumbersome. Sometimes they take 3 or 4 months to do, similar to an audit of your taxes, your financial records. And we have some legislation that will streamline that process. It will make it easier to find out if a carrier is indeed complying with this federal law. Let me just give you an example. For example, someone who's struggling with depression or bipolar, the insurance company might say, we're going to give you 3 visits with a therapist. We know that you're not going to cure depression with 2 or 3 visits with a therapist. It doesn't work like that. And in order to get more visits, a person has to file a lot of forms and so forth in order to get access to their coverage. We don't believe that's mental health parity, and we want to address that in a meaningful way, and our legislation does that. The other legislation that is also under consideration right now is a resolution that directs the Legislative Budget and Finance Agency to do a comprehensive investigation, a study, if you will, to find out about access to mental health services. We want to know why people are not accessing their coverages the way they should. We want to make sure that people who struggle with a mental illness, the people that struggle with any kind of behavioral health issue, we want to make sure that they're getting the help, that support, and the health care that they need to be well. And this study will manifest that.
On that same topic, and it's not related to any particular legislation, but just on the idea of access to mental health care and the quality of our mental health care these days, as opposed to someone who comes in with a broken leg or some type of physical injury where it's easy to say, okay, this is the problem, this is what we have to do to fix it. Why do you think, even in the public view, I think still mental health doesn't quite get the same amount of taken seriously, I want to say? Maybe you have a thought on that, maybe you agree or don't agree, and what's the fix to that?
You ask a great question. There's still a stigma to someone who struggles with mental illness. Sometimes people think it's a sign of weakness or what have you. Even in the military, soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, Coast Guardsmen that have been in combat, have been in a very stressful situation, they're not always eager to go to sick call and say, hey, I'm having some post-traumatic stress symptoms here. You don't want the whole world to know that you struggle with some of these mental health issues. And so there is a stigma. In addition to that, on the insurance side, sometimes it takes months, sometimes years for someone to get a diagnosis. It might be post-traumatic stress, but you know, it's not where you can take someone's pulse and say, okay, I think you have high blood pressure. Right. It's not like that. Sometimes it takes a long time just to peel back the onion and to say, okay, I think we know what's the matter here. Here's our treatment plan. And the treatment might go on for months, sometimes years, sometimes a lifetime of therapy and medication. Sometimes the insurance carriers are not too keen on paying for that. even though the federal law says you have to pay for it. And if you were in getting a hip replacement, you wouldn't have to fill out lots of forms in order to continue to be seen with for physical therapy, so you could get your mobility back and to have your body working as it should. And someone who struggles with a mental illness, again, with depression, bipolar, post-traumatic stress, some kind of paranoia, they shouldn't have to fill out a lot of forms in order to continue to get the health care that they are entitled to.
Yeah. You mentioned the military, and I'm going to jump to another topic that you're also involved in, but it involves the military. You recently participated in a press conference with the governor, and it was on what they call workplace and military readiness. It has to do with the problems that we are having recruiting soldiers. Tell us more about that.
As you know, and many of my constituents know, I'm a combat veteran, served in Iraq, and so I'm very interested in our military, especially our National Guard. Our National Guard is below strength. Not just our National Guard, but every branch of the military is down in recruiting. That is a result of a few things. We have a very robust economy right now. Many young men and young women are in college or have well-paying jobs, and they're just not looking at the military as they have in the past. The other side of that is that many of the young men and women across America don't qualify for military service. They cannot score high enough either in the ASVAB test, the qualification test, or they have some kind of blemish in their background, possibly a criminal conviction for something serious, and so forth. So we're worried about this. Our armed forces strength is down. In Pennsylvania, our National Guard is down, and this has impacted our ability to do our mission, to respond to floods and natural disasters and things like that. So the mission readiness press conference that you made mention of, we had some military leaders, including General Corelli, our Adjutant General in Pennsylvania for our National Guard, and we were talking about our young men and women being ready, being academically challenged, and being academically and intellectually ready to serve in the military and to go to college and so forth, because these things are all connected. And we want to see smaller class sizes in our public schools. We also want to see higher quality instructional experiences. We want to see schools with state-of-the-art technology. We want to see our children being prepared for the challenges and the rigors of the 21st century. And so that's not just good for our military, it's good for preparing our young men and women for career and technical education and higher education as well.
Very good. I know you spend a lot of your time bringing to light issues that aren't necessarily in the public eye, but are well deserving to be in the public eye. And we've already talked about the mental health access. We've talked now about the military and the challenges of finding and recruiting new soldiers and new folks for our military. But you also are involved in something that a woman's issue that not too many people, I think, probably still know a whole lot about. You went down to a rally in Washington recently. Tell us about that and what that was about.
In October, I was invited to be the keynote speaker at a rally on the National Mall right near the Washington Monument that was attempting to bring awareness to female genital mutilation. This is a crime usually against young women, usually between the ages of 2 and 15. It is a cultural practice where young females have healthy, normal genital tissue that is cut away, normally with a razor blade or some sharp object. And this does not have any kind of religious underpinning or anything like that. This is strictly cultural, done primarily in parts of West Africa, the Middle East, and even in Southwest Asia. And as our nation and our Commonwealth has become a destination for populations that have immigrated here, many of these populations have brought this practice with them. They brought it to Pennsylvania. Not only is the practice going on, the practice is on the rise. Many of these botched cases have ended up in emergency rooms in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And this is something that, number one, we have to educate people to. I had to educate, to the best of my ability, my colleagues to remind them that this is actually taking place in Pennsylvania. It is a ghastly, barbaric procedure that is done on innocent young girls. It is certainly a violation of a female's bodily integrity. It is produces not just physical problems, but psychological ones as well, most especially post-traumatic stress, where a young girl is actually held down while she is cut this way. And we passed a law in Pennsylvania. It's taken us a long time to get it to the finish line, but it makes it a first-degree felony to do this to a little girl in Pennsylvania now. And we have some follow-up legislation that we're working on to educate people and to make sure that anybody who would consider doing this to an innocent young girl knows that they are committing a very, very serious crime. 35 other states already have the legislation, and there's many that have it in the pipeline. We worked with Zonta International, which has a club in Harrisburg and Hershey. We also worked with the AHA Foundation, which is based in Maryland, that has been very active on this issue. But I'm really sorry that we even have to talk about it. But the fact of the matter is that it's taking place. I actually witnessed, when I was serving in Iraq, a case of this where a young girl went into shock because of blood loss, and our medic had to have the girl and her father medevac to a troop medical clinic. So I actually have seen this up close and personal.
We're talking with Representative Thomas Murt from the 152nd District in Montgomery and Philadelphia counties. Representative Murt, just to finish up here, it's just, again, you find yourself getting involved in these issues that are sometimes sensitive issues, sometimes not all that well known, that don't have necessarily the power of the press or of media behind them. What drives you to be part of these types of efforts?
That's a great question. And the answer is, my legislative interests, my priorities personally, have to do with human services, taking care of people, sometimes people that can't afford a very expensive, well-connected lobbyist, and including homeless veterans, adults with special needs, people that struggle with mental illness, and so forth. And part of our mission, part of our activity frequently is trying to educate some of our colleagues in the House and in the Senate that many of these issues have gone unaddressed for decades, for a very, very long time. And sometimes it takes a while to catch up in funding and programs and services and so forth. And we've had great success working with Governor Wolf and his administration, as well as some leaders in the House and the Senate, and getting some of our legislation to the finish line.
Well, I know you'll continue the fight on all these issues that you're passionate about, and there'll be more to come on all these issues, and you'll report them to your constituents as news comes, right?
All right, thanks, Herb.
Excellent. And that is all the time we have for this legislative report. If you have any questions for Representative Murt, if we can help you with any state government-related matter, please don't hesitate to contact him at his district office, through Facebook, through his website. All that contact information will be on your screen in a moment. Thanks for watching, and please join us next time for Legislative Report with your state representative, Tom Murt.